Let's talk about how we buy and sell electricity. It seems pretty simple, right? You flip a switch, you get power, you pay a bill. But behind that switch is this massive, incredibly complex market. Today, we're going to dig into a pretty radical new idea, one that suggests the very foundation of that market might be all wrong. And we'll see how a total rethink could lead to a smarter, fairer, and way more stable grid for all of us. Okay, let's get into it. So, we're all pretty used to the idea of commodity markets, right? We have them for everything: gold, oil, corn, sugar. You've got supply, you've got demand, and somewhere in the middle, a price pops out. It's a model that works for a whole lot of things. And that, right there, brings us to the absolute core question of this entire explainer. For decades, we've basically treated electricity just like it's a pile of coal or a bushel of corn. But is it? Really? Does it actually behave the same way? And should we be trading it the same way? The answer to that could literally change everything. To really get what's going on, we have to look at how this system was built in the first place. And it was designed with this fundamental split, a tale of two very, very different layers. Think of it like this. You have the electrons layer. That's the actual physical stuff: the wires, the power plants, the transformers. It's all about physics and engineering. And then, running on top of that, but totally separate, you have the money layer. That's the financial market where all the buying and selling happens. For the longest time, the engineers worried about the grid, and the economists designed the market, and they pretty much didn't talk to each other. And this is where it gets really fascinating. These two layers have completely different ideas of what balance even means. For the physical grid, balance or equilibrium is about physics. Is the frequency right? Is the voltage stable? For the market, equilibrium is all about money. Are we using the cheapest power plants first? Is everybody getting paid what they're owed? The core assumption has always been, if the money layer is balanced, the electron layer will just follow along. Well, that core assumption, the one our entire system is built on, is starting to break down. The physical grid has changed dramatically, but the market design, it's pretty much stuck in the 20th century. And you can see that evolution right here. Back in the day, the grid was simple. You had power plants you could turn on and off, like coal or gas, and the network could handle it. But then, in the 2000s, we started adding wind and solar. You can't just dial those up and down. Then, in the 2010s, you get rooftop solar, sending power backwards into a grid that was designed as a one-way street. And now, you've got whole neighborhoods plugging in their EVs at the same time, putting a massive strain on the local wires. So what happens when the reality of the grid doesn't match the theory of the market anymore? Well, you get exactly this. You get crazy volatile price swings, you get an inefficient system that doesn't use resources well, and you get a system that, for a lot of people, feels fundamentally unfair. So this is where the big new idea comes in. What if we just stopped thinking about the market as a financial auction and started thinking about it like an engineer? What if the market itself could act like a controller for the grid? The key concept here is something called a feedback control system. And look, it sounds complicated, but you have one in your house right now. It's your thermostat. It's constantly measuring the temperature, comparing it to where you want it to be, and then turning the heat or the AC on and off to keep everything stable. It's a constant loop of measure, compare, adjust. And that's the whole paradigm shift right there. We could actually design the electricity market to act like a giant thermostat for the grid. It would constantly measure the physical state of the grid, that electron layer, and then adjust its financial signals to keep the whole thing physically balanced, not just financially balanced. Okay, so this new kind of market, this new approach, it has a name. It's called an automatic market maker, or AMM for short. And it's a concept that's being pulled from other fields and applied to one of our biggest challenges, our energy grid. So let's just put the old way and the new way side by side. The old market, based on what's called locational marginal pricing, or LMP, gives you these wild, unpredictable price spikes. And crucially, it's memoryless. Every 5 minutes, it's a brand new auction, like the last 5 minutes never even happened. The new AMM approach couldn't be more different. It uses smooth, predictable signals that always stay within a set range. And it has a fairness memory. It remembers what happened before. And this fairness memory idea is a total game changer. The AMM basically gives every user a shortage budget. So if the grid is strained and you end up getting less power than you were supposed to, the system doesn't just shrug and forget about it. Nope, it tracks that. It's like it writes down an IOU, and it prioritizes you later on to make sure you get paid back, in a sense. It's fairness baked right into the code of the market. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great on paper, but does it actually work?
Well, let's take a look at what the simulations show.
So the researchers really kicked the tires on this. They simulated a huge shock to the system, like a big power plant just suddenly going offline forever. And look at the results. Yeah, the market signals, those lines on the graph, they go up, but they do it smoothly, and they stay within their designed limits. The whole system stays stable. It doesn't fly off the handle.
I mean, this slide says it all. Just look at the difference. That spiky, jagged line jumping all over the place, that's what the old market model can look like. But that smooth, continuous line, that's the AMM. You can literally see how it just gracefully adjusts to what's happening instead of creating all that chaos.
But what about that fairness feature? Does adding this memory break the whole system? Well, no. As you can see here, turning on the fairness memory does change who gets power during a shortage. It redistributes it more fairly over time. But the system's overall stability, the tracking error, it stays perfectly controlled. It's incredible proof that you can have both fairness and stability. So what does this all mean when you put it together? It's way more than just a clever piece of code. It's basically a blueprint for a totally different kind of energy future, one that's a whole lot smarter.
So why does this matter so much? Well, first, stability. You're swapping out chaotic price spikes for predictable signals. Second, fairness. It's not just a nice idea, it's built right into the system's memory. Third, it's programmable. Grid operators could literally tune the market's behavior to balance things like performance and cost. And finally, resilience. You end up with a market that's designed from the ground up for the physics of the modern grid, not the one we had 50 years ago.
And I think this quote from the paper just nails it. The point here isn't to say this new way is economically better in all the old ways we measure things. The point is that it offers something completely new, a different set of guarantees. Guarantees that come from engineering control theory, designed specifically for stability and predictability. And that kind of leaves us with this final, really powerful question. The electricity grid, it's one of the most complex, most critical things we've ever built. If we can use this kind of thinking, blending engineering, fairness, and market design to solve its biggest problems, what other critical infrastructure could we fix next?